presentation?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, if Miss O'Donnell joins us, that's great. If not, we might have some participants join us with a video and later on. I know it's July and everybody's kind of enjoying the sun and doing different things. So anyhow, I can be on the screen. I thought I'd start with some introductions, which we kind of just did now, but I'll just kind of introduce myself a little bit more. I am Melissa Reynolds, and I taught in Virginia for about 12 years, and then I moved here to North Carolina, and I taught 3rd grade and 5th grade over at Charborough Elementary, and now I'm assistant principal over at Moyock Elementary. I've been interested in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People for about a decade now. I think 2010 was my first experience with it. And I've been through several different Covey trainings, things like that. So kind of that's where my background comes. And I can tell you a little bit more later about just the different experiences I've had and relate them to this information. But I did want to do a quick little icebreaker think activity. So if you can bear with me, in the chat box, if you don't mind, typing the answer to this question. What skills are most important for the future success of your students as they become independent adults and potential employees or employers? So what skills do you think children today need to know for their future success? Let's start with that and see what you think. You can put more than one, you can, you know, whatever you think. All right. And I'm going to let you, we're going to hold on to these and come back to them in a minute. I just kind of wanted to see what people were thinking first, and I'll come back to that. So, oh, good. Kathy threw something in there too. So this is just a little quick outline of what we're going to talk about today. And being that it is a little bit smaller group, and I probably won't talk very long. I don't think I'll go a full hour, just so you know. Just kind of, this is actually a part 2. So Stephen Covey has several books out there, but 2 of the bigger ones is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and then The Leader in Me. And so I did a presentation back in late May, early June on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and what they were and a little bit of information about that. And then, so this is a follow-up where I'm going to be focusing more on the other book, The Leader in Me, and how to implement basically the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People in the schools. So for our presentation today, I'm going to do a review of the 7 habits real quick for memory and freshening the memory of what the 7 habits are. And if you missed that one, I'm sure we can get the video from Kathy on that, or if there's lots of resources online too that you can learn more about the 7 habits. I will say this real quick, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that book is a much deeper read, whereas The Leader in Me is a much lighter education piece. It's easier to read.
So then it would be better towards the middle school level.
So honestly, if you're looking at implementing for your school, probably reading The Leader in Me. If you're looking at doing a book study for your staff, probably The Leader in Me. You may want to do a refresher on what the 7 habits are because it's about implementing them in school, but it doesn't go into a ton of detail about what they are. It does some, but to really effectively understand the 7 habits, you don't have to read this entire book either. That's a deep read that I actually didn't circle back around and really read deeper into those 7 habits until later in my dabblings. Okay. So that's definitely where I would start. And then I'm going to give you the 4 steps for implementation today if you are interested in implementing it at a classroom level, at a school level, whatever. And then I'm just going to give you guys some resources for that. So having said that, this is a quick review of the 7 habits. So the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is essentially the the work of Dr. Stephen Covey saying, okay, I'm going to do some research. What do successful people in life have in common? You know, whether that be athletically successful, intellectually successful. What do people that are successful in their fields have in common? And I'm going to narrow those down into specific traits or skills, kind of like that icebreaker question that I asked you. And then organize it in a book. So he'll say to you, Dr. Covey would say to you that he didn't invent these habits, he just organized them. So it's just a study that pulled these together. So the book is actually in 4 parts. The first part is kind of an introduction, just talking about principles and paradigms. And then it breaks the 7 habits into 3 further parts. And they made this graphic over here, the continuum graphic. And it's really strategic in the way that they developed it, because habits 1, 2, and 3 are down here at the bottom, then 4, 5, and 6 up here at the top, and then 7 goes around. So basically, the way it's designed is that babies, when they're born, are completely dependent. So, you know, they don't know how to walk, they don't know how to talk, they can't eat on their own, they can't do anything on them. They're completely dependent. When you, as a human being, grow and develop, you do these first 3 habits first, and it becomes a private victory. Those are sort of solo habits. Those are the things that a person does without having to interact with others, really. So habit 1 is be proactive. That's kind of that concept of taking charge and doing things without being asked, or without, you know, being self-aware, environmentally aware to where you're doing those things. But also further, it's about control, personal control, and controlling your moods and making choices and knowing that what you have control over, and choosing to control things that affect you. So it talks a lot about pushing through bad moods and things like that. Habit 2 is begin with the end in mind. That's basically about planning and scheduling and purpose. And then habit 3 is put first things first. That's the habit of time management. And now that I've made a plan, how do I get it all to fit it? So these, again, are things that begin to build that personal victory towards success, where you might become independent. Now you can live in an apartment on your own and function on your own. And hopefully that's what every parent wants for their child. So after that, habit 4, 5, and 6 are more like the play with others habits, where you start to build towards interdependence. These are the habits where your habit 4 is think win-win. Okay, now you have a conflict or a difference of opinion. What can you do to solve that problem where everybody is mutually benefiting? Habit 5 is seek first to understand and then to be understood, which is the habit of listening, not just active listening, but listening with a lens of trying to understand the other person's point of view. And you really grow as a leader in that field when you can start to learn what other people are thinking and make decisions based on others. And then habit 6 is synergize. That's your teamwork, really becoming the most productive that you can be by building and using resources of other people. Habit 7 loops around intentionally because it's the habit of renewal, is what they call it, but basically sharpening the saw, meaning health, mind, taking care of yourself. And the idea there is that if you don't take time to sharpen your saw and take care of yourself, then you won't be able to function in any of these habits. So, and I think we as women are often guilty of ignoring habit 7 sometimes because we're so focused on these other habits. We forget to take care of ourselves. And we're really no good to anybody if we don't take care of ourselves. And it turns out in his studies that truly successful people do take time to meditate, to exercise, to focus on themselves a little bit because they can be a better version of themselves. Now, having said that, I'm going to go ahead and put my normal disclaimer out there that I do when I talk about the habits. Just because I know them does not mean that I claim in any way to be good at them. I often still forget habit 7. There are still days where I go all the way back to habit 1 and I'm in a bad mood and I decide I'm going to stay in a bad mood. So, I mean, it doesn't make us perfect at it. It just makes us a little bit more conscious at it. So I'll put that disclaimer out there. I always think the same. you know, just because I say it, it feels like you're in a glass house throwing a stone, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm saying what you should do, but I don't always do it. So that's just the quickie version of the 7 habits. Now, if you ever want me to come to your school, if any administrators or guidance counselors or any teachers out there want me to come to your school and talk to your class about them, or do some kind of workshop for your school, I'm always willing to do that. But that's the quickie version of that. So going back to that icebreaker question, I'm going to pull up the chat. So Deb said critical thinking. We said social skills, collaboration, being able to listen, problem solve, perseverance when a job or some kind of task is hard, pushing through it. That's a great one, Kathy, because I don't know that our current youth is used to anything other than instant gratification, and perseverance is really kind of the skill or the trait that goes against that. So that's a really good one. So thinking about those skills that you all identified, which I agree are still skills that any employer is going to be looking for in a new employee, that we know that we want our students to have to be successful. Where do we think as educators those skills fall in terms of the content we teach, the curriculum, some of the educational strategies we employ in our classroom management, our building behavior management, and even what we praise and what we recognize? I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. Please share. I don't want to put you on the spot because there's not very many of you, but can you think of places where it is built into our curriculum, where it is built into our pacing guides and our instruction and the educational piece of what we do?
I know a lot of, because I've been working with the 7 habits for since it was introduced to Currituck. And I mean, luckily, a lot of the habits are worked into my language arts curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Like we do a whole thing on perseverance, and and a lot of it, I do like small little, like 5 or 10 minute things on a habit, because we usually do one a month, but then they're worked into the language arts and which is incorporated the social studies and everything. So a lot of it's incorporated through that. And I use the Starfall program, language arts.
I would agree with that, Mary. As a teacher at Charborough, I was a team teacher, and I taught mostly ELA as well, but at the 5th grade level. And a lot of where I could build it in was especially in the language arts area, because you can relate it to some of the stories, the deeper meaning of the stories that you're doing, the character motivations, with maybe some of those themes of the story where the animal or the fairy tale or the fable character didn't show perseverance and there was a lesson learned or something like that. So it can be kind of built in there. But I think that you're as a good educator, you are building that in there intentionally. I'm not so sure that it's outlined in our curriculums very well, but as somebody who's exposed to it, you've kind of built it into your ELA portion. I was hoping we might have a guidance counselor on here. I do think maybe in counseling, it's sort of in the curriculum some.
I know Stephanie Cox did a lot with it.
Yes, she's amazing. Love Stephanie. We all love Stephanie. And I also could intentionally build it into my social studies and history lessons sometimes, because it relates to some of the things that historians have studied, some of the foundations of government documents, things like that. So it really could be built in there. And I know that as educators, we're exposed to 21st century skills as a piece of what we know we're supposed to be embedding in our classrooms. So it's kind of in that area, but it's not as intentional as math standard 3.2, you're going to multiply numbers with common denominators. You know what I mean? It's very embedded, but also sort of unintentional. It's kind of like you have to bring it forward to make it intentional. So that's kind of where I'm going to.
Teaching those soft skills within your lessons. Yeah.
Absolutely. It is. And even in the book, I'm glad you used the word soft skills, Deb, because in the book, it talks about that at the beginning of the book, The Leader in Me, that these are supposedly the soft skills, but that, and I'm going to go into the history of The Leader in Me a little bit. Oops.
Well, we got the Leader in Me book when it was first introduced, right?
I think at different schools, not necessarily district-wide. I think there were Charborough, Moyac Elementary, and maybe Knott's Island and Central, I think, might have done it. I don't know that it went.
Does it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the other schools did it.
We have the book I know we have The Leader in Me. I have one in my room.
Okay, and do you have the red one like this? Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a newer edition too, a blue one, but I have the red one too. So when this book, in the beginning of the book, it talks about, soft skills in general, but that when employers were asked the same question I just asked you, turns out they didn't say, I want somebody who's really good at multiplying. I want somebody who knows the Constitution really well. A lot of the content that we teach in school is not exactly what employers are looking for. They're looking for what you just said: critical thinking, social skills, collaboration, perseverance, and those soft skills. So it is important to keep on building those. And that's kind of the way it began. So I'm gonna click on this link here. This is the story of The Leader in Me, the book. It takes me to the link I put in here, and I put this on your resources page later. It's theleaderinme.org. And it's website. It's got a lot of resources about The Leader in Me. But their story begins down here with a lady named Muriel Summers. She was the principal of a school in Raleigh, North Carolina. And basically, she went to one of Dr. Covey's, she summarizes it down here. She went to one of Dr. Covey's trainings on the 7 Habits, which at the time, he was really designing those for business leaders, talking about how can CEOs come to this workshop? How can you really get the most out of your employees and your business? And as an educator, she came up to him after the session and said, what do you think about using this in schools? He was like, I don't know, because that's not really what I intended it for. I never really thought about it that way. But hey, try it and let me know how it goes. So she did. And so when she did, it was successful. So she went back to him, talked about it. They decided to write a book together. So he actually is the lead author of the book with a lot of input from her and her experiences. And actually the second edition has a lot more writing of hers, as well as Dr. Covey's son, Sean. So it's kind of the story of how the book got started. A great summary sentence here is basically that she believed in leadership, responsibility, accountability, problem solving, social emotional skills were just as important as reading and math. So if we know that we're trying to design and prepare students for the future and prepare them for being effective, being successful, we need to intentionally build in those soft skills. So it ended up with a magnet school out of that. I'm gonna go back to this PowerPoint. And so now there's the concept of Leader in Me Lighthouse schools, which are basically schools that have taken on the process of fully embedding these 7 habits in their school. So when I show you the 4 steps of implementation in a minute, those are the ones that have kind of gone through that process. There's also specific criteria to become a actual certified, recognized Leader in Me Lighthouse school through Franklin Covey Group. But you don't have to go that far. You can see that it's a lot about student leadership. And if you ever get the opportunity, I don't know if either of you have, to go visit them, most Lighthouse schools, I'm pretty sure all of them are required to, have leadership days where they invite the public to come in and see their model. And they'll put the students in charge of a lot of leadership activities. They'll show you the different components that they've built into their schools to become lighthouse schools. So having said that, I put this little graphic on here with the different sizes. It's really not a one size fits all in some ways, but in some ways it is, because you can do it at any piece you want to. So maybe you just want to do it in your classroom. Maybe as a guidance counselor, you just want to do it in some of your guidance lessons. Maybe as an administrator, you want to really try to get your whole school to become a lighthouse school or some kind of version of that. You can really modify it to fit whatever scale you're trying to do. And there are 4 steps to implementation that are covered in the book. Other chapters in the book talk about the school, A.B. Combs, how the book came along, give you a little bit of a background on the 7 habits, the paradigms, and the principles, and all that. Once they get to chapter 8, that's the chapter that they start talking about implementation. So I kind of wanted to focus on that chapter. And the 4 steps are inspire, trust, clarify, purpose, align systems, and unleash talent. So look at those. So step 1 is inspire trust. This is the step where you're creating buy-in. And I would almost argue that these are the 4 steps to really implement any significant change of any kind. Your piece where you need to bring credibility and buy-in is your pyramid of influence. I like this little graphic. It shows on this side what the influencer, like the educator, would be doing, and then on the other side, kind of what the student or the person being influenced would feel. So it's basically 3 steps of like modeling, relating, and then teaching, intentional teaching. So it's kind of like as the students, they would, or even as a staff, if you're teaching a staff, when you're modeling it, they see it and they can now understand it because they have some kind of background information about it. As you begin relating to people about it and verbally relating to, oh, okay, that situation a minute ago when these 2 people were arguing, we thought of a way that everybody could win as a solution. That was think win-win. So then they can begin to feel it in play. And then beyond that, when you really start intentionally teaching it, that's where it really truly becomes heard. So a way to do that with a staff, if you're looking to build this in your school, would be to do some book studies, would do some professional development, some facilitated discussions, and just make sure there's that structured system of support where, you know, for people who have questions or want to know more. Before I talk a little bit more, well, let me go this way first. So to me, the key to all that is a voluntary system. I think that a lot of buy-in comes from somebody choosing to participate. People tend to want to see the value in it and then purposely seek it out before they want to be told what to do. And then beyond that is the paradigm shift. That the whole concept of the 7 habits is a big paradigm shift from thinking about direct instruction and a teacher-centered classroom with teacher leadership to more of a collaboration style and a student-centered classroom with student leadership. So for some teachers, that's a paradigm shift that they really have to start thinking about how they look at their classroom differently. Now, I did write this in terms of a staff wanting to become, or a school wanting to become a lighthouse school, or an administrator wanting to bring a staff on board with it. But if you wanted to just do it in a classroom, those book studies could be stories. There are some literature that I'm going to show you later, that little books that go with the 7 habits, and you can direct instruction on the actual habits. There's videos and things like that, and teaching students to have a paradigm shift. And that's a big deal for kindergartners, all the way through elementary and into middle to really start beginning to think about others at all. And then I'm sure those of you in the high school world would argue that they still need some help thinking about other people. I don't know. But it's definitely a big thing in elementary land. So that's kind of a way that you could do that. And I will say, when I first came to Charborough as a third grade teacher, I had taught in Virginia for several years, and I was introduced to the 7 habits there. I had that experience before I came. But I was new to North Carolina, and I was new to Charborough Elementary, and I knew, okay, I can't just walk in and say, I'm doing this really super cool thing, and everyone else should do it too. That's not gonna get me, that's not gonna inspire trust. That's not gonna build people going, oh, the new girl thinks she knows everything. It's really what it's going to be building. So instead, I started down here at the modeling. I started with my class a little bit. I put up some posters on the wall. Other teachers heard me talking about it, and they're like, hey, what are you doing? Oh, it's really cool. I'll tell you about it if you're interested in it. And to where I ended up leading a book study, and the staff of Charborough Elementary kind of brought it in and learned a lot about it. I think it's just about the way that you create buy-in. You can't force people into buy-in. Trust is a big deal. And unfortunately, it's often the step that gets skipped because it's not the actual action part. We're going to get to that part in a minute. But Muriel Summers has a quote on here that says, with people, slow is better. And that just means make sure you take that time to go slow and build in the buy-in. Often we know what it's like. We've all been teachers where we've been told, oh, here's the new thing we're doing. Everyone's doing it, and there's not that taking the time to do step 1 and build the buy-in. It's not going to be successful. So definitely take the time to do that if you're interested in implementing. So step 2 is to clarify purpose. So what they mean is basically creating a definition of what your vision is and what your expectations are. So how that occurs is just staff discussions on, okay, what do we want? What do we want for our students? What are skills we want our students to learn? What is our vision for our school? Maybe creating a mission statement or setting up some goals. And then a little bit of outlining an action plan, putting into place a timeline of who's going to do what and when we're going to do it. How are we going to implement change as an organization? So I put on here habit 2, which is begin with the end in mind. And then I put organizational versus personal. I know when I showed you that continuum before, I talked about the first 3 habits being a personal thing, but you can also do it at an organizational level. So whether you're a nonprofit or a PTA or a school or a business, you also go through these things where your business has to be proactive and your business has to begin with the end in mind. So this is where we're taking beginning with the end in mind and implementing it as an organization of a school. What plan do we want to develop so that we can set the goals and then take action? The phrase that's used in the book often is mental creation precedes physical creation. How do you really create something without putting some thought into it first? Think about any time you've ever done a home improvement project, or you've built something, or you've planned a party. You didn't just say, I'm going to have a party today. Okay, great. It's going to go well because I invited all my friends. No, you got to go to the store. You got to buy stuff, same with if you're doing a project that's a home improvement project. There's a lot of measuring and preparing and planning. I mean, especially where we live, you can't run to Home Depot 10 times throughout the project. You've really got to plan ahead and make sure you have what you need. So with planning how you're going to implement the 7 habits in your school, you might start looking at, okay, who are the people that are most vested? What types of things can they do to help implement this? What different roles can people in our school take on to get us to where our vision is? And then that kind of builds you into step 3. Step 3 is to align your systems. And this is really like where you set yourself up for success. So it's the actual action of implementation. This is the part that people want to go to right away. Step 3, this is what I want to do. And I think this is the meat of everything. And this is what a teacher would want to know for their classroom, an administrator would want to know for their school, is how do I get boots on the ground? How do I get it happening? So I really liked that word ubiquitous, which is kind of what Mary was saying with embedding it into your language arts, embedding it into your lessons. It's a way of an all-encompassing way of putting it in together. And really and truly, the key to that is involving all your staff. That's guidance, that's cafeteria, custodial, everyone can be a part of this if we really truly want to set it up for a successful implementation. So all of your systems that you're going to want to align, culture, language, those are that's that part of that paradigm shift where now instead of saying words to students like, I don't know, the language would be more like in the 7 habits. When you did that, were you being proactive? Was that the most proactive decision you could make? Or what's another way you could have been more proactive in that situation? And embedding the language of the 7 habits in your conversations with students, with each other, so that you're modeling it as well and other students are hearing. The artifacts piece is where you start maybe putting posters up, signs, so that it's visual. Student-made art is fantastic. You'll see that when you go through different Leader in Me schools, Lighthouse schools, you see a lot of student-created art and things like that. It also helps with anchor charts to certain habits so that you can go back and say, okay, habit 1 chart says, I choose my actions and moods. It's right there. It's visual. It's on the wall. I know that, yeah, today was a bad day for me. Something happened, but ultimately I choose my actions and moods. So I have this artifact I can refer back to on the wall for my students. You can build it into your traditions. A lot of schools have parent nights. Well, maybe your parent night has a leadership component now. Maybe your student of the month program is based around a habit of the month instead of a student of the month. So you take your traditions that you already had, and for this ubiquitous approach, you build in that 7 habit language and principles. A big part of it is behavior management. And for me personally, this is where a lot of the paradigm shift happens, because you need to kind of switch from the whole thought process of action consequence when you're dealing with children to a bad choice or a decision and a learning opportunity. So a lot of what I would do in my classroom is teach the 7 habits. I would read stories about it, teach my students about it. But then, of course, like any other person, they're human. They're going to not always make the best choice. They're not always going to follow one of the 7 habits. Maybe they didn't do their work when they were supposed to, and they didn't put first things first. And I have to have that conversation of, did you put first things first? And then to take that from, well, you didn't, so now, bam, here's a consequence, to let's turn that into a learning opportunity. What happened? What natural consequences happened because you didn't? Well, okay, so you got a bad grade on that assignment, or because you didn't study, you didn't do well on that test. And then I had some little reflection think sheets that's a common little elementary practice, reflection sheets and think sheets that tied back to the 7 habits that I created and said, basically, how could you have been a better leader? What habit do you think you need to use better next time? Reflection. Because, you know, anybody who's been in a school for a while can tell you that same kid is the same kid walking at recess every day. That same kid is the same kid in silent lunch every day often. If we're not taking the time to teach them where they went wrong and what habit would have helped them to be more successful next time, we're not really going to see a change. We're just consequenting a lack of something. So building it into your behavior management and your student leadership opportunities, things like that, will help really ground its roots into your school, making it a piece of staff meetings and parent communication. Now, I will give a couple disclaimers here. I think that often as educators, we're like all or nothing. You know what I mean? Like we're going to go all the way with this, or we're like, so your first instinct might be, well, I'm going to have a parent night. I'm going to teach all the parents the 7 habits and make sure that they can pass a test on what each habit is. Well, you don't have to go that way. You can just start having conversations and using those words in some of your dojo posts, in some of your Facebook posts, things like that, and start to just kind of let it naturally occur. Slower is better. So if you show a Facebook post that says, look, these are our leaders of the month for habit 1, be proactive, and these are the things they did. Or you send a little happygram type note home with a student that says, oh, I'm so proud of them today, they used habit 1, and you just put that on there. You'll be becoming teaching the parents to become aware of the 7 habits. Some of them may even have background in it through their businesses or studies. And then it'll sort of begin to snowball from there. It doesn't always have to be so intentional. It can be embedded in some ways. I think this is also the piece where in a classroom, you really start to use student literature books, student-based lessons, and some of the stuff I'm going to show you at the end for the resources. So that's probably another big piece of instructing students. And then the last step is just unleashing your talent. So every school has, and every classroom has a lot of character, unique people that bring ideas and creativity to the table. And so really empowering people, and it's the basic principle under habit 6, synergize, is bringing people together and letting them bring their ideas to the table, show their creativity. So being strategic when you pick your committee leaders, when you have PLCs, and saying, oh, you know, Miss Smith is really animated when she tells stories. Maybe we're going to record Miss Smith reading a book about one of the 7 habits, and we can play it as a video during the morning announcements, because she is maybe she's your librarian and she is just really good at a read aloud. Or maybe your art teacher is much more reserved, but would love to take on a group of students and do some kind of hallway artifact, activity. Or maybe if you're looking more within just the lens of a classroom, all right, you have a child who seems to be really, really aware of others, pretty perceptionally aware of others. Maybe that's the person that you put in your classroom who's the leader in charge of making sure that everybody has somebody to play with at recess on certain days, or she's part of a leadership team at recess that walks around and checks on other students at recess and asks them how their day is going. When you empower your students to do things outside the box, they actually often really enjoy it. So most classrooms have classroom jobs, light turner on or off, or door closer, or line leader, whatever. But going bigger than that and trying to empower them to connect to those 7 habits. Okay, so put first things first. Well, maybe you have somebody who checks the basket to make sure everybody turned in their work, and they're the put first things first leader, and they make sure that everybody turned in this assignment and just checks it off on a list for you. Empowering students in your classroom, empowering teachers in your building, and staff in general that might be more inclined. You never know what creativity anybody brings to the table. So beyond that, I really just put together some resources. These 2 here are both websites. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm going to click on it real quick. Takes you to the Franklin Covey website. Now they have a lot of they have a broad reach of things that they do, but the 7 Habits is a big part of it. So they also do a lot of organizational planners and things like that, merchandise you can buy, things like that. But what I really like about the website here is it talks to you about the 7 habits and has some video clips and learning more if you really want to dive into one habit. So let's say that as a school, you really want to implement this, but you know that it could take a little bit of time. Or even let's say you're a guidance counselor and you're like, you know what, I've noticed, I'm a guidance counselor at the high school, and I've noticed that students are really just not doing their work, and the grades have dropped. They're kind of, I don't know, they don't have any affect, and they're not really worried about it. Maybe I need to do some kind of activity on putting first things first and some time management stuff. Then you could learn more about it and get some videos about it and think about how you want to just take a piece of the 7 habits and implement them. So there's a lot to explore on the website about the 7 habits. And then the Leader in Me link takes you to the leaderinme.org website, which has the story that I showed you of how the book was written, but it also has a lot of resources for schools. It also is a great resource for parents. If parents want to know more about it, if you start sending home things, or their kid comes home and says something about habit, and the parent's like, hey, reaches out to you, and I want to know more about these habits, this is a great place to send a parent to. And they do have a COVID-19 kind of resource bank for parents, for teachers, and for administrators. That's worth a look too. So it kind of gives you an idea. It can take you all the way from just wanting to implement some of it in your classroom to becoming a lighthouse school, if that's something you're interested in. So there's that. Also, if you search like Amazon or any Google search, you can start to see the books. This book here, The 7 Habits of Happy Kids, this is a book that has 7 short stories in it, that each one relates to the habit. So it's a quick read aloud that you can do with your class. You can do just one story at a time, but they're short. Then there's a series of books that are the habits, one for each habit. You can order, if you're not so creative yourself like me and you don't know how to draw at all, and you want things on your wall and your artifacts, you can order different poster sets and things like that. And then I put TPT on here because a lot of teachers are really talented, and this comes with that whole synergize, unleashing talent. A lot of teachers will create different habit activities and then put it on Teachers Pay Teachers or displays or things like that. And then also there's a Facebook group or page, and what I really like about the Facebook page, if you like the Leader in Me on Facebook, is that they'll post not just it doesn't focus completely on just the Franklin Covey and the 7 habits. There'll be stories of successful people and interesting educational articles and things like that I often like to read. So those are some of the resources I have in place. I know I kind of went blah, 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 and talked really fast and went through all of it. But if you have any questions, please let me know. If you are interested in any way in doing more in your classroom or in your building with it, I'm happy to come out. I have most of the books in this series if you want to borrow a book. I have created some of my own little, I don't want to say documents, but like worksheets and things, reflective think sheets for students that you could tweak and change, put your name at the bottom, put things like that on there. So if there's something particular that you're interested, reach out to me, let me know, and I can help you with those things. I really appreciate you joining me today, Deb and Mary. Do you have any questions?
No, I just wanted to say, I'm not sure. I know we have the 7 Habits of Happy Kids. We have that. And we do, I think our library does have the library books.
The set of the student ones? Yeah.
I think, and I'm not even sure where I got them, but I've got PowerPoints for each of the 7 habits that like a lot of them are like journal writing, but we'll just do discussion, but I think the one that my kids like the most is from the Be Proactive, where it compares being a bottle of water to a bottle of soda.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they just get the biggest kick out of that. Like they'll even say, so-and-so's getting to be like a bottle of soda, and they use that a lot. They think that's funny. So, but yeah.
And it's a great way to connect to like a kindergarten, elementary age student with reactions and how to connect that habit to them. And they think it's funny, but they really are learning.
Yeah.
And when I did the first presentation on the 7 habits, I showed a short video clip for habit 1 where the people got stuck on the escalator. It stops and they get stuck and they just stand there and they yell for help and they don't just walk down the steps. I show that to my class all the time and they think it's hilarious. They're like, why didn't they just walk down the steps? But you wouldn't believe how many adults get stuck. Like, I'm having a bad day and I'm just stuck in it. And, and so they would do the same thing where you said they would laugh. Oh, he's getting to be like a soda bottle. Like, somebody's stuck on their escalator, because they don't want to move past the problem. So it is a great way. There's all kinds of cute videos out there to kind of connect that too for students.
When you were talking about the buy-in, it's kind of like when this came out, it was just, here you go, we're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, once I got into it, and if you really get into it, you realize just how easy it is to just incorporate it into your day.
Yes. And so I'm not going to lie. The first time that I was introduced to the Leader in Me book, I also was handed it and said, we're going to do this. And so I'm that kind of person who likes to write in the margins. There's a lot of sarcasm in the first few pages in my margins. I'm like, this ain't going to work, but as I got into it as well, I was like, wait a minute, this stuff is really life skills. This stuff is almost more important than, some of those historical facts we want kids to memorize, because they're going to grow up with a computer. They're going to grow up with the internet. They can find information like that. Whether you're a cashier, whether your first job's a cashier at Food Line, the cash register will tell you how much money to give them back. You don't need to be great at math, but you do need to know how to talk to customers. So, it's kind of made me realize, wait a minute, this is actually a valuable program. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I know. I was introduced to it when I was at Knott's Island, and I thought it was great. I mean, it's like you said, it's skills they're going to need for the rest of their lives, and just helps them manage themselves better than relying on other people too. Makes them.
But as a teacher, we were like, oh my God, something else we have to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like I said, if you just look at it, you can just incorporate it. Doesn't have, now I do, like I said, I'll do a 5 to 10 minute intentional thing. But then the rest of the day, it's just worked in as we go, and it's
right.
Yeah, and you said Shawboro, Moyock are both doing it.
So I have not been a part of implementing it at Moyock. That was my first year at Moyock Elementary last year, and they had already kind of built it. But I was a part of it at Shawboro. But that made me think of a challenge that I've been thinking about recently. So in the book, it talks about after step 4, unleash the talent, and you've kind of gone through the implementation. At some point, implementation has to turn into like continuing it. You know what I mean? Like as you bring in new staff members who maybe missed the instruction on it, I noticed that every school that I've done it at a couple of different schools, it starts to kind of tail off and needs to be revived. And I think that's the case with anything. Simple as Daily 5. We all went through this big Daily 5 training. Everybody was gung-ho Daily 5. And then new people came on board. The older staff members who were exposed to it are doing it with fidelity because they've known it for years. Maybe new staff members picked up on a few pieces, but they never went through the full training of it. So it kind of becomes like it slides to the back burner a little bit. So I think that there almost could be a step 5 of just kind of keeping it fresh once you do go through the implementation of it. So I feel like that's where we need to be next at Moyock.
that's how I feel that's happened at Knott's Island. Is like when it first came out, it seemed like everybody was, into it and doing it. But as the years have gone on, it's kind of tailed off. So sometimes I feel like, I'm doing all this work all year and then it doesn't get continued. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I don't know. And Deb, what do you think? It's kind of like riding a bike a little bit.
Yeah.
You
One
know
thing
it.
from the kids' perspective, if they're getting it at the elementary schools and then they get to the middle school where they are faced with all these social issues and social problems, to me, it's a no-brainer. We should have it here too, just to keep reinforcing those skills that they started to build in elementary school to help them with these soft skills they need. Because then we're just kind of saying, here you go, you're out.
I absolutely agree with that, Deb. So when I taught at Charborough as a third grade teacher, I taught it to my students, but then I went up to fifth grade. So 2 years later, when that batch of third graders had come to me again for fifth grade, we jumped. We would hit the ground running with it because many of them were already exposed to it. They brought on the kids that maybe weren't in my third grade class, and we rolled with it. So, as a scaffold at the middle school or high school level, if you've got kids that are already exposed to it, they're going to come with so much more background knowledge on it.
Yeah, if all the feeder schools are doing it, it makes sense to continue it.
Absolutely. I would agree. And kind of knowing that they did it before, you can even say to them, hey, I know when you were back at Charborough or when you were back in elementary school, you heard these words before.
Right. And this is how you can apply it to when you're getting older and,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is a little bit like riding a bike in that, it's in there. You might put it on the back burner for a little while because we got a new math program or because we got a new whatever, but you can pull it back out pretty easily once you've had that training. So let me ask you both this, because this was the part that I was having a little bit of a hard time getting into this today. And I don't know if it's because it's July or because I had the stress on my mind of reopening schools and stuff like that. But I thought, I love the 7 habits. Why am I having a hard time getting into preparing for this presentation? And I felt a little bit like I often tell people it's not an extra, it's embedded, it's soft skills, but it's easy to connect to. But I worry a little bit about how to relate to it for remote learning. If you're doing some kind of remote learning, how do you think you could embed it? So I don't know if you have any ideas, share with me, because other than like read alouds and video clips, it seems like a challenge of how to implement it maybe in a non-traditional classroom. Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's a good question.
I mean, I would say be deliberate in your language that you're using for your assignments. Okay, we're going to be proactive today. We're going, or let's sharpen our saw. Let's take 3 minutes and just maybe just trying to embed it that way and with using your language.
Yeah, that's a great idea because that works in the traditional classroom, but yeah, that would work in a remote classroom too.
Yeah.
And I would think at the middle school and high school level, maybe having an intentional lesson on habit 3, put first things first, and time management might be important with remote learning because my middle schooler had a little bit of a challenge with that when the remote learning was happening. Because this is not my normal day. Time management used to sort of naturally happen with the bells.
Right. So like now, I know that teachers were giving them pep talks or just, if they're on there with 10 minutes, just kind of focus, help bring them back to the thing.
I think that would be another way to do it. And I still think there's value to read alouds, even if you're doing it on a video versus a classroom. Yeah. So a lot of that read aloud stuff would be good.
You could even link it to a YouTube video on that.
Exactly. Well, again, Mary and Deb and Kathy, I appreciate you being with me this morning. And please reach out to me if you ever have any questions. I don't know a lot about it. I don't know everything about it, but I like to find the answers to things and I'd love to help. So if you ever have any questions, please just ask.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
This was wonderful.
Thank you, Kathy. I enjoyed it. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your summer.
You too.
Thank you.
I'll see you in about 30 minutes.
Exactly.